What's going on, guys? It's Danny from Slow Restoration, and we are in fact working on the exhaust on the Camaro, but we do have a slight issue. I've been kind of putting this off, picking away at it a little bit at a time, as you can see from some of the other videos, but I think I've decided we're just going to this cross member. As you can see, the header outlet on both sides and the notch or the hump in the cross member for the exhaust just does not line up, and the fact that we had to put a spacer under the trans mount to make it the right height so it wouldn't hit this cross member. This is a brand new powder coated cross member that came with the transmission kit. It does work if you do use that spacer, but I don't like it. So I just took these two bolts out. We're going to take these two bolts out. We're going to pull this back out. I got my pole jack under the transmission. I'll go ahead and jack it up here a little bit. There we go. And now we're loose. We'll take those two bolts out. We're going to pull this out. We're actually going to cut this thing apart and modify it. All right, we have that completely unbolted. Now we're loose. We got our studs out of here and our spacer. It's not the end of the world to run a spacer. That's no real big deal. It's just more the exhaust clearance that obviously I'm working on exhaust, and that's why I just decided to go ahead and do this. But we can actually fix two issues at one time. My biggest problem with the exhaust is I cannot come straight out without either really severely flat spotting that or dropping down and then back up, and that's a high visibility point. I mean, if you look from the side of the car, you can see the header dropping down, and that's really the low point, is that header. So if we come down from there and then back up, it's just not gonna look good. So we're gonna fix that. We're gonna be able to come either straight off or actually start to angle up immediately. And as you can see here, the factory floor for the factory crossmember has a notch in it. So these, we have the notches here, so we can actually move this crossmember, or not the crossmember, well, yes. So the mounting points will stay the same on the frame. We'll leave them bolted in, and we'll actually move the crossmember forward so it'll more evenly line up with this mount, and it'll line up into this cutout area. Now with that in the cutout area, we can actually raise this thing right on up a good 1.5 inches, which will make a ton more clearance for the exhaust, and I think we can get away with no trans spacer at all. So with that being said, let's go ahead and pull this cross member right out of here, and we'll put it down on the ground here, and we're just going to cut these end brackets off. We'll clean the welds up, and we already have plates. I'll show you in a second. All right, we got it on my chopping block here. We got a porta band. Here's the plates we're going to use. They're I think they're 2.5 by 4 inch by 3/8 thick. So pretty much what we're going to do is going to cut these brackets off, clean the weld up. We'll cut the bar, the weld off the bar, clean that up, grind the powder coat back a little bit so we can actually weld to it, and then we'll bolt everything back up in the car and position these, tack it all together, use these as the new spacers, and pull it back out of the car and weld it all up. We got the ends of the cross member all cleaned up and the powder coat ground back a little bit so we can weld it, and then we'll go ahead and throw this up in the car. All right, and with that up in the car, we actually have it bolted right to the transmission mount the way it should be. And it's kind of evenly spaced in there. Everything lines up. And as you can see, we go right up inside this factory cutout. Plenty of room still there. I'm not real sure why they didn't. I mean, this cross member is probably nothing really wrong with it. It doesn't quite fit our application, but it's all right. We're gonna make it fit. All right, we got everything cleaned up. These plates, the weld is gone now, so it's nice and smooth. We'll take one of these plates, and now we can slip that up in there, position it exactly where we want to. We'll probably cut that corner off, make it match the angle. All right, we now got these plates tack welded to these. Like I said, we'll cut that corner off, make that nice, and go ahead and zip these up. We'll put these back on. As you can see, this top is slotted, so once we have these welded up, we'll put these on the frame, line our bolt holes up, and just slide it out to where that tube meets here. We'll get that tacked on, pull the whole thing out, and finish welding that, and then it's just a matter of repainting this thing. Completely welded up. We got it touched up as far as the paint and reinstalled. Everything looks really good, and now as you can see, we're up in that pocket on both sides, and we have killer exhaust clearance now, and no spacer for the transmission. So I think we're good all the way around there. It looks way better to me. So now we can start actually building the exhaust. Well, we're back to work on the exhaust. We have this side trimmed, but there is quite a storm going on outside. Let's see if we can open this without getting wet. Yeah, shoo. And we'll shut that again real quick. All right, so the first step in this is make sure you have your collectors on there. Whatever gasket you're going to use, we have copper O-ring embossed gaskets. We have them on, and we have our bolts not completely dead tightened down, but snugged up good, so these aren't going to move, and they're pulled in to where they're going to be. When you're dealing with really close tolerances here, you're definitely going to want to make sure everything is where it needs to be. If you have these kind of just sitting up here and they're moved around a little bit, you're going to end up being off after you weld, and you don't want that. You don't want to have to recut after you weld. So we have these bolted up. It takes a lot of planning, a lot of trial and error. I got the first part of it mocked up off the collector. We'll pull that tight in there. I have the cutout kind of nestled right in between these two cross members, and I think I like that. I was going to mount the cutout right here, but I think it'll work better here. But like I said, it's a lot of planning and it's a lot of back and forth. You got to make both sides uniform, and as you can see, the headers are not uniform. One's way further back than the other, and even the angle they come out is kind of weird, not the same. So once we get off the header, that first point, the exhaust system needs to be uniform, and then we need to bring it back through the car as uniform as possible. At least that's my opinion on how to build an exhaust. And now we have our second side mocked up. Again, everything's not uniform, and then when we get out to here, I want it to be uniform. So we have no control over the headers, but as we come back, this next point here, I want it to be uniform, and I think they're pretty uniform. It may not look like it in the camera because the camera angle as you move around, stuff changes, and this motor hangs down a little more on this side. It's just offset. That's just the way they are. But we're still well above the low points. Like this low point and this low point, we're still well above that. So if you look from the side, it all looks pretty good. Now we have these front pipes up until this cross member for our Speed Tech torque arm. That's where all that attaches. So we're good to there. Now we're going to start mocking up mid pipes, and this is about where we want our muffler. Give us some space to kind of build our up and over the axle. Now again, we will not be able to go all the way out with the tailpipe. For right now, even though it's not my favorite, I think we're going to do a dump right here, and here's our hanger. We'll hang this whole system, and then once Chris buys the correct gas tank for the suspension in the mini tubs, so it's a gas tank with the corner cut off pretty much, and that gives you enough room to get a 3-inch pipe through there. Well, I can't show every single step here. It'd be too tedious, and I kind of go back and forth as I'm building this, but we do got these mid pipes started. I have this one tacked together. It's actually going to kind of go up in there like that. I have a radius piece right there going into the muffler. Now we're doing the joining pipe. This side isn't welded up yet, but it's just kind of mocked up there. So We are working on that little mid pipe we need, so I'm gonna keep rolling here, and we'll keep checking back in and making sure we keep you up to date as we go. We got the mid pipe from the cutout all the way back to the muffler, including the muffler, all tacked up. It's looking pretty good. It's still kind of floating. We're getting ready to slip this out and weld all these joints up, and then we might actually drop this down, weld these. I think we're going to do that. So we'll weld all these up. Sometimes when you weld these, even though they're tacked together, they do move a little bit. So we'll leave one spot for some adjustment. As you can see, we have no exhaust system at all on that side. That's because it's completely mocked up, and down there we're going to finish welding the last couple welds, and that side's done except for whatever we're going to do for a tailpipe, and we'll figure that out once we get both sides done here. While the tailpipe's down, or this side is down, we went ahead and trimmed the end of the muffler off, and we had some V-band clamps, so we welded a V-band to the back of this muffler. I have a plan for at least a temporary tailpipe up over the axle, and it'll be headed in the right direction, so when we get the right tank and put our permanent tailpipes on, we won't have to backtrack. So let's get this room back up on the car, and we'll go over that tailpipe idea. I got busy doing it, and we just went ahead and finished it. So here is my tailpipe idea. We did put, like I said, a V-band clamp at the end of the muffler, so we can remove this tailpipe and do our work for the real tails. I think they're going to end up back here, but that's later. So we're up over the axle and dumping behind the axle. I think it looks pretty good for right now. It's not my favorite, but for right now it's the best option. I didn't really like the look. As you will see these mufflers from behind, it's just the way these cars are shaped, and I didn't really want a dump right here where you could see it. This may be hanging down a little bit, but like I said, we can always undo this V-band clamp and shorten them up to wherever. This is just the full length of that 180 pipe, so we're going to move to that side, try to mirror image it as close as possible, and then we'll adjust length of this turn down here later on once we have both sides done and we're down on the ground. We see how it looks. I think it might actually be good there, but it may be a little long. I'm not sure. I like the fact that it's at least over the axle, you know, behind the axle. Still dumps, which isn't my favorite, but right now it's our best option, I believe. So like this side, we're going to come back, and the muffler will be at a slight angle. So instead of just jamming the pipe in there sideways, we did whittle a piece down. I cut a bend and cut it at 2 angles, cleaned it all up, so that will actually, the marker end goes into the muffler. That will go in there and get us that slight bend. You can see a little bit more on this side. So that'll be the slight bend as it comes for the transfer from the mid pipe. We're all mocked up on this side. Everything's tacked together. I think it looks pretty good. We have not did the tailpipe yet, but we'll get to that once all of this is welded. We're going to loosen the collector up, drop this whole thing down, weld all the seams up, throw it back up on there, and then we'll build the tailpipe. As I'm mocking this tailpipe up on this side, the other option, which would have been just kind of end it at the muffler and do a turn down dump, which would have been kind of something like that, and that's okay. That's not my thing. To me, that side looks way better, even though it's not 100% out the back of the car. It's at least up over the axle, and I like it way better. Looks way better to me than that. So this is our up pipe. Get it flipped around here so that'll go in there and go up, and then we'll get connected in to come up over that axle. All right, it's time to get cleaned up. I started already a little bit, but here is the finished product. Not 100% the way I wanted to run it, but although this SpeedTech rear suspension is awesome and you know, fits really nice, It makes the car handle amazing. It is slightly more challenging when you go to put the exhaust on. Normally I would bring the exhaust back and right where all of this is, put an X pipe and then go back out. But it makes it just slightly more challenging, but we got it done. I think it looks pretty good. Actually, it looks really good. And I'm pretty happy with the tailpipe dumps for right now. You got to really watch all this stuff. Like I said, pay attention when you're putting this in. Like that panhard bar being crooked because there's no suspension weight on it right now can really throw you off when you're looking and trying to eye things up. But I think it looks pretty good as far as making it appear correct side to side, even though we couldn't 100% make each side exactly the same because of header placement and a couple other things. But that's the exhaust. Unfortunately, this car's not quite ready to start, so we can't hear it, but very soon, guys. I apologize for that. I want to hear it too, but very soon we'll fire this thing up. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good day.